Welcome to join the Hong Kong Tableau user group, the last meeting in year 2020. First of all, on behalf of the user group, I'm Paolo, the leader of the group, and I would really like to thank you all of you to join this meeting, despite the fact that right now we have to run this in a virtual format. Unfortunately, we're still facing a serious situation in Hong Kong, so we can't make it in person this time, but I do hope that one day we can meet in person again. But in this virtual workshop, we have prepared a set of cool features of the latest Tableau features introduced in 2019 and 2020. So I hope you will find it useful in your work and in your study. So in today's workshop, we are going to cover a number of new features. As you can see in the screen, some of the features include dynamic parameters, parameter actions, set controls, show high containers, width elimination, and the like. To me, I do find this group of features quite useful because in the past, if we would like to achieve similar results, we may have to do a lot of different workaround in order to do that. But now, with this newly introduced features, we can do it with a few clicks, which is quite nice. I'm going to show everyone an example. This is a dashboard which is made by one of my teammates, Jesse. This is a submission to online competition for the Wish of Social Good. Wish for Social Good is an NGO which aim at helping NGOs to make use of data better. And if you're interested, you can Google it, and they do some pretty cool stuff. In this dashboard, one of the features that I like here is the so high container. Because if you look at these dashboards, if you look at these dashboards, in the past, with so many information on the dashboard and so many ways that you can click, you may have challenges in explaining it to first-time dashboard users on what they could do with this dashboard and how they should navigate that. You may have to write a separate notes in other formats, or you may need to discuss with them verbally. But now, by using the show high container, you can actually embed the user guide within the dashboard, just like here. If you click this user guide, you can see actually you can overlay a layer of instruction to tell the user how you can, what different parts of the dashboard do and how they can interact with the dashboard, which I think is a really cool stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Bobby, who is going to walk us through the list of the features in today's workshop. Thank you, Bobby.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So thank you, Paulo. So good evening, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining, taking some of your personal time to join this workshop. Okay, I have been in discussion with Paulo quite a bit about what to include in today's workshop or gathering. So I realize a lot of users have been using Tableau quite a bit already, quite for a while already. But Tableau always releases new versions. There's always new features available. So it's sometimes hard to follow exactly what new features are there and what's really useful in each of the new version. So we come up with an idea to have a workshop, which we will show you some of the key features since 2019.1 up to 2020.1 as well. Okay, so I believe everybody should have downloaded the workbook. So if you haven't, please go to the chat room in this Zoom. You should see a link posted by our panelists. So if you click on that link, it should bring you to Ignite, which is a site that you can download this workbook and just open it up. But you do need to have version at least 2020.1 to see the full functionality of this workbook, because this workbook is actually created based on a 2020.1 version. Okay, so if you haven't downloaded, haven't opened it, please open it and download it and have it ready. So in today's workshop, we will be covering a few very important features that we have added since 2019. So at the bottom, this is the first page. So at the bottom, you can see the tabs. So For some of these sheets, we actually have an exercise, a practice page for us to exercise on how to make things happen. So let's go over them one by one and have some fun here. So looking at this first page here, it is one of the dashboards that we have made for our Data Day Out event back in 2019, which is related to the trade war that was happening between US and other part of the world. So we have gathered some public data related to the trade figures with the US and try to come up with some visualizations to help us better understand the situation. So in this particular visualization, so you can see at the very top are the three key figures based on trade. So we have the import dollar amount to the US, the total trade balance in and out from US, and also the export dollar amount from the US as well. So you can see that at the top, we have three key figures. And at the bottom, we have a map which shows the top 10 US trade partners, okay? The thicker the line, that means the closer relationship is with that particular partner country. So here, particularly, we can see one line being very, very thick. Obviously, that is China, because China has a very close trade relationship with the US, is actually the biggest one. So here, currently, in this particular visualization, we are looking at the import to US amount, okay? So this is only look at one measure, which is the top left-hand corner measures. But what if I would like to change the measure of it from maybe import to US, maybe to export from US, to see who are the top 10s in that way. So the old way of doing it will be to create a parameters, okay, which you can drop down box and be radio buttons. So you let your viewer to select which measure they want to show in the map and do the sorting and do the ranking and everything. But in 2019 and onwards, we have added something called the parameter actions, which you can actually bring values from an actions to a parameters. So in this particular dashboard, when you clicked on, for example, the trade balance, okay, at the very top, you can see that the visualization, the map specifically, will change accordingly. Again, if you click on the export from US, you can see that the map at the bottom change accordingly as well. So currently, I'm actually using these measure names, the import to US, trade balance, and export from US, okay, and make it as actions to bring that particular measure values to the parameters to affect, to change the measure being used in the map, okay? So this is one actions that we have added, which is parameter actions, to bring values from actions to a parameter. Another type of action that we have added since 2019 version is set actions. So here, look at the right-hand side, we can see two donut charts. One is related to the import to US ratio. The other one is export from US ratio. So here you can see we have some percentage there and some colors on it as well. So the blue and the orange color actually represents the top 10 countries with the US, the trade partners with the US, and it's their proportion of trade compared to the overall trade in the US. So here we can see the blue section, which is import to US. The top 10 country actually takes up 67% of the overall trade, whereas the top 10 country takes up 63% of the export from US accordingly. So here we can see the set it's being occupied, it's being used to occupy certain colors in the donut chart. And the idea of the set action is we can change the set composition by using some actions. So here, when we go to the left-hand side map, okay, if you click on any of the lines, okay, that we have on the map, for example, China, you can see that the donut chart color will change accordingly. So when you click on a particular country, okay, for example, China or maybe South Korea, you can see the donut chart distribution change. What that means is currently I'm looking at South Korea specifically. So currently we can see that South Korea only takes up 2.74% of the overall import and 2.9% in the overall export, okay, to and from into the US. So the idea here is we can control the set which is in that particular donut chart so that it only looks at that particular country that I selected on. And if I deselect it, okay, we can bring it back to the top 10 distribution donut chart, okay? So here in this particular dashboard, we are looking at two types of new actions that we have added into Tableau, which one is parameter action, the other one is set actions. And let's take a look at how this is done, okay? So let's jump to the second sheet, which is parameter set action practice, okay? So here we have the same dashboard that we saw earlier, but currently in this particular dashboard, there is no action set up. So when you click on import to US, trade balance, or export to US, nothing changes because there's no action set up yet. So to set up the action, just like any actions in Tableau, you just go to the dashboard menu and go to the action menu, okay? So if you have been using Tableau long enough, maybe since version 9 or so, you may still remember that back in the old days, we only have 3 types of actions, like filter actions, highlight actions, and go to URL actions. They're the simple ones, right? But now starting in 2019, we have added more and more, okay? We have added a navigation action called go to this particular sheet, okay? And we have added 2 very important action type, which is parameter actions and set value actions. So currently what I want to do is I want to make these values, these measure at the top as a parameter values so that it can change the value being used to do the top 10 in the map. So here what I want to do is create a parameter action. So here I select create parameters action. So first of all, I always want to give it a name. So what I want to do is I want to set, okay, measure value. That's what I want to do. So here, the first section, we have to select the source sheet. So which sheet we want to select to change a particular parameters. So the sheet that I want is the trade figures. So I deselect these 3 first, just have the trade figures one selected. Then the second part we need to select is which parameters we want to change. So the parameter we want to change is the measure, okay, parameters, which actually affects how Tableau does the top 10 and also which country does display the top 10 of what, okay? So that's the measure figures. So here at the bottom, we can select, okay, so what values are we bringing in? So for parameter actions, instead of just bringing in a particular measures or particular dimensions, we have a very, very neat option, which is called the measure name option, okay? Because for these upper sheet here is actually one big sheet, which consists of 3 different measures: import to US, trade balance, and export from US. So currently we're not taking the value of those measures, like the figures, but instead we're just taking the names of this measure. So here we can just pick up the measure name, okay, from the US trade with the world. And this is just the name, there's no aggregation. And then we just click OK. By setting up this action, what happened here is when I click on each of these figures, it will bring the name of that measures to the parameters called the measure. So let me just click OK and show how it will affect the bottom chart. So now when I click on import to US, trade balance, or export to US, you can see that the map will change accordingly, because now the bottom chart will get the measure values from my parameters, okay? And that parameters is currently affected by the top sheet here, which is actually changing the value of the parameters, okay? So that is one way that we can use the parameter action, which is to look at a sheet and pick up the measure name and bring it to a particular parameters and use that parameters to affect other sheets measures by setting up the calculation. The other type of actions that we have added is called the set action. So set is a group of members in a particular populations that we want to group together and create an in and out set, okay? So here on the right-hand side, we have 2 donut charts. So we have 2 types of set. One is the top 10 import set. The other one is the top 10 export set. So the color actually shows the distribution of trade value from those top 10 countries. So what I wanted to do is I want to create another action such that when I click on a particular country in the dashboard, it will bring that country into the set only and drop everything else, okay? So basically, I want to change the members in a set by an action. So the idea is the same. Every time we want to have an interactive analysis in Tableau, it's always an action. So to create an action, we just go to dashboard and go to the actions menu. So in this case now, we can add an action called the set value action. So you can see at the menu, it's a bit different from the other one, because currently we are not changing just a parameter value, but we're changing a value in a set, okay? So again, we need to set up what is the source sheet. So we want to select a particular country from the map. So I just need the top 10 US trade partners sheet, okay? And what is the target set, which is the input. So which data source is coming from? It's still the US trade with the world. And the target set is import and export, but we have to set it up one at a time. So here we do have a top 10 export countries and top 10 import country. Let's look at the import first, okay? So let's select the top 10 import countries. So here on the right-hand side, we have 3 options here, which is what will happen if you clear the selection, if you deselect the country that you previously selected. So you can either keep the set, which is keeping that one country that you have selected, or you can remove all the values to make the set empty, or just bring the set back to the original state, which in our case is the original top 10 countries set. Okay, so what I want to do is every time I want to deselect the country that I selected, it will just bring the set back to the original state. So I keep it as the middle option, add all values to the set. So basically keeping it as the original values. So by setting this up, of course, we're going to give it a name. We're going to set top 10 import, okay, countries, and click OK. So now we have an action which will change the import country set. Let's click OK. And here I can just hit particular countries. So you can see that once I hit the country, you can see the upper donut chart, the import to US ratio chart changes, because now I'm asking Tableau to bring this particular country, for example, Japan, and put it into the set and remove everything else. So now when I look at the import, okay, to US ratio donut chart, this particular section, which is the 6.91%, is actually the VAT figures representing Japan import specifically to the US. And we want to bring that Japan value to the export from US donut chart as well. We just need to add another action. So here again, similar action would be to go back to dashboard, actions menu, add an action, change the set values. But just in this case, we are changing not the import countries, but the export countries instead. So for every set that we want to change the value of, we need to set up a separate action. Okay, so keep that in mind. So we have multiple sets in our dashboards, and we want to affect by one action by affecting multiple set. We have to set up multiple set actions. So in this case, I want to affect two sets. One is import, the other one is export. Okay, and here I deselect the other sheets that I don't need as the source. So in this case, I just keep the top 10 US trade partners one. And then you can see there's no more warning sign saying that I don't have the needed measures or dimensions. So here when I click OK, then I'll have the third actions, which is the set import countries. Okay? If I click OK, and then I go back to the map and selecting different countries, you can see that the bottom right-hand corner donut chart changes as well. So now we can see that one action, by clicking a particular country line, it will bring that particular country's name into the set of import and export. Okay, so here I'm just showing a sample use case of how to use the parameter actions and set actions. But of course, once you get the idea, you can actually apply it in different types of interactivities in your dashboard. Okay? Another point I want to point out about the original dashboard that I showed earlier is this little filter icon that I have on top of my map. Okay, so previously Paulo mentioned about the hide and show container options, and it is actually very important when we have many filters like drop-down boxes, radio buttons, or different types of parameter controls that you want to display on a dashboard, because they occupy quite a bit of space. So instead of always laying them out, it's always a good idea to use a hide and show containers to hide and show them. So here in this particular case, when you hit that little filter icon, you can see that a box popped up. Okay, so this box is actually a container containing a set of filters. Okay, so you may be wondering, like, how come this box is actually black and I cannot see the words? Okay? This is also another feature that I want to highlight, is the transparency, container transparency that we've added into different components. So currently you can see that this particular containers is all black. Okay, it's very hard to see the words. If we want to change the background colors to maybe white or maybe transparent, you can always just select the container, okay, and then just go to that layout and change the background here. Okay, so here, do make sure that you're selecting the container, okay, the vertical container. And here you can see that the background now is just black, okay, 100% black. And if I want to make it more visible, we can change that to white. And in case you want to show the background instead, you can change it to none. And that's something new. We can make any containers or any visualization into transparent background. So if we put none here, so you can see that we can see the background maps as well. But in this case, it's still dark, so it's very hard to see. So probably I will change it to white as background then, okay? So here is another thing. So you can always control the container background color so that you can make words or dashboards or even filters more visible. Okay. So here in this particular dashboard, I have added and hide and show containers. But how do we create that? Okay. All of these hide and show containers comes from containers. So let's see how we can make use of containers and how we can add those add and show control here. Let's go back to the second sheet, the parameter set action practice. So the first thing that we need are the filters, right? And also the parameters. So to add those filters and parameters back into my dashboard, the easiest way would be to select a viz that contains the value that you want to add it as filters. So in this case, the import, export, the trade balance, and also the top N countries. So here, just go to this map, okay, select it, make sure that we have the menu for the map visualization. And then we just turn on the filters that we need. So just go to the filter menu and select, for example, filters export, okay, from US. You can see once I add a filters in, it will always be added to the right-hand side. Tableau always create a container for you automatically, okay? So once you turn on the filter, it will bring that filter into a container on the very right-hand side. And in case you want to add more, you just go back to the filters menu and select maybe import, trade balance, or the top N, okay? So just go to parameters and select top N, okay? Just like that, we get a container, okay, containing 3 filters and 1 parameter controls. So now what I want to do is I want to bring this containers into the dashboard, okay, on the map, but add and show control so that we can hide and show that particular containers. So the trick here is to turn this container, okay, which contains the 3 filters and the parameters, okay, into floating. So the first thing is we have to make sure we are selecting the containers, okay? So make sure we are in the container state, and then we change it to floating, okay? Once you turn it into floating, then you can see a box shows up here containing the 3 filters and the parameters, and you can drag it around and put it into a location that you like. And again, it's very hard to read now because the background is black and the words that we have on the filters and the parameters are also black. So make it more visible, just like before, we just need to turn on the backgrounds to make it white, then we can see it properly. So now I have a filter on top of a map, but I don't want to show it all the time. I just want to show it when I need it. So to make it hide and show, we can go to the menu of this container. There is an option called Add, Show, and Hide button, okay? If we select that, a little box will pop up, okay? And initially, it will give you a little X here. This is if you want to close it. So you can actually try this hide and show by hitting your Alt key and then just select this cross sign, just like that. Make sure you're selecting the Alt key. Then you can do the hide and show. Okay? And this particular hide and show button can be adjusted as well. So currently, we're using an X to close it and a 3 stripes to show it. In case you want to add different words or you want to add different image to do this hide and show button, you can always just go to the menu, okay, of the button and go to edit button. Okay, give me a minute, it will pop up a menu where we can select what words or what image to use to show the hide and show. So here we can see when the item is hidden or hidden show which value to use. So here I want to use a little filter icon. So I can just go to my choose image. And here in my computers, I have a little filter PNG available. So I'll just select that and just click applied and click OK. Just like that, that little 3 stripe image will get changed to a little filter icon. You can use any image, okay? That's JPEG or PNG as an image. But now when I select Alt, okay, and hit that hide and show button, you can see that the hide and show containers will pop up and hide, okay, accordingly. So why do you need the Alt key? It's because we are still in edit mode. So once you have published your dashboard to a Tableau server or you're in presentation mode, you don't need to select the Alt key, okay? You can just hide and show containers very, very easily like that, okay? So this is a very neat feature because it can save you a lot of real estate on your dashboard. Previously, we may need to lay out all the filters and all the parameters on your dashboard, which takes up quite a bit of space, but now you can always hide them when needed, and only show them when you need to change some filters or parameter values. Okay. And yes, so this is a very useful one in case you have a limited space, okay, in your dashboard. Okay? So here in this particular dashboard, I have shown 3 new features. One is the parameter actions. The other one is set value actions. The other one is the high and show containers. They are very, very useful. Okay, and try to apply them in your case and in your visualization if possible. Okay. So next one is take a look at dynamic parameters. Okay. So dynamic parameters. Okay. It's a case where the parameter values will get updated based on what's available in the original data source. Okay? If you have been using Tableau and have been using parameters, you may still remember that the list of parameter values are fixed, okay? Meaning that it will not get updated unless you go into the parameters options and change the list of values. So no matter what values is in the database, it will not get reflected unless you go in and update it manually. But starting in 2019 versions, 2020 version, we have added the dynamic parameter features, meaning that every time when a parameter shows up, you can ask Tableau to query the original database and see what are the values available in database and pull that full list over and put them as a parameter values. So here in my particular dashboard here, I have made a select country parameters, which you can change the country name, and it will use that country as a reference and compare compare with other countries. So here we select Canada. Okay, you can see that the viz will change and Canada will get highlighted. Okay, as number 1. If you change it into, for example, Brazil. Okay, and you can see that Brazil will get highlighted in blue, and all the other country will be comparing with Brazil. Okay, accordingly. So, but the idea here is this selected country list may change in the backend database. But if I need to update it previously in the older version, I probably need to go into the parameter control and update it myself manually. But now with the dynamic parameters, we don't need to do that. So here I have already created what's called a selected country parameters. If I go to the menu of it, okay, just go to edit. So here in the 2020.1 version onwards, the parameter menu actually got updated with more options. One of the key options that we added is the when workbook opens options. Okay? So basically what this is when every time when you open up this workbook, no matter it is on Tableau server or it is on your Tableau desktop, okay, it will query the database of the US trade with war in this case and look at the country dimension, okay, and see what are the available countries. Okay, so if originally the countries, there were only 100 countries, but now we're 101 country, then Tableau will take that 101 country and populate it into the parameter list. And it will do that for you automatically. Okay? So here in 2020.1 onwards, you can always ask Tableau to update the parameter list based on a values in a data source. Okay? The data source can be a database, or it can be an Excel file, CSV files. It says every time when we open the workbook, it will update the values. Okay? So to keep this in mind, okay, in case you're creating parameters and you know that the parameters will get updated. So this is a great features for us to update the parameters values so that we don't need to go in manually and update these values, yeah, one by one, okay, like before. So that is the dynamic parameters. So others new features that we added are the spatial calculation, which are very, very useful, okay, especially when we have spatial data like latitude and longitude, okay. So let's jump to the spatial calculation example. So here we have seen this map before, which basically shows the top 10 countries in terms of trade values with the US. So instead of showing each country as a filled map or a bubble map, okay, we linked up the partner countries with the US so that we know which one is original countries and which is the partner countries. So in this case, all the countries are related with the US. So basically, we're connecting the US with all the other partner countries that is on the list. But how do we create this line here, okay, which is the trick? So in Tableau 2019.2 version onwards, we have created some spatial calculation availables for us to create spatial data based on available latitude and longitude or X and Y coordinates. Okay? So let's try to create such line here so that we can analyze data with your spatial calculation. Let's jump to the spatial calculation practice. So before we can use spatial calculation, we have to make sure we have some spatial data. The most importantly, latitude and longitude, or XY coordinates. So in my data, I have different countries who is doing business with the US, and I have these countries' latitude and longitude. So if you go to the measure of this US trade with the world data source, you should see origin latitude and origin longitude, and partner latitude and partner latitude and longitude. Okay? So with the latitude and longitude of the US and all the partner countries, I can actually ask Tableau to create a line to link them up. Okay? So to create spatial calculation is just like creating any other calculation. We just go to the dimension menu and select create calculated field. So what spatial calculation are available? They are actually one type of calculation available. So we create a group for them. So if you go to the right-hand side of the calculation box, go to the drop-down at the very bottom, we have a new sets of calculation called spatial. Okay? If you select that, we have 4 different types of spatial calculation: make point, make line, distance, and buffer. Now to create the line that is connecting US with all their trading partner countries, we need to use 2 calculation. One is make point, okay? Making point of the origin and the destination. And then we use make line to connect the 2 dots together, okay? So the first thing is we need to create points for the original and points for the target or the destination. So to do that, we just need to use the make point function, okay? So for the make point spatial calculation, we need 2 input, okay? One is the latitude, the other one is the longitude. So in my case, I'm making the original point, original spatial points. So here I use make points, but I select the origin, okay? Latitude, okay? Now for the second parameter, it would be the origin, okay? Longitude, okay? And just like that, we have created a point, it's a geometric point, which is using the original latitude and longitude, which is basically the US. So here I'll just give it a name first. I'm going to call it origin, okay, 1, okay? And click OK. Then here you can see a newly created calculator field pops up. Okay, it's called origin 1. And you can see on the left-hand side, the type is already a geotype, a little globe icon shows up. Okay, so every time you use make point or make line, Tableau always creates a geographical row dimensions or measures for you automatically. So now I have the original origin. We have to create the destination. So instead of recreating everything from scratch, I like to just do a duplicate. I'll just go to origin 1 and create a duplicate, and then just update this duplicate so that it's not using the origin latitude anymore, but using the partner, okay? Latitude, okay? And the partner longitude, okay? That, and for the name, I'm just gonna call it partner 1, okay? Fine, okay. So now that we have 2 spatial points, okay? One is the original, the other one is the partner country. The next step is to connect the dots together. To connect the dot, we can use the second spatial calculation, which is make line. So to do that, we just select one of the input that we need, which is one of the spatial points, and go to create, calculate a field. And here we just add in the make line, okay, calculation. And it will ask for a start and end, which they both need to be spatial points, which is exactly what we have created earlier, the origin and the partner spatial points. So here I just select origin 1 and partner 1, and then close off the bracket. And here we have the origin to partner line. And by selecting OK, then here we can see another GeoMeasure pops up, okay? So it's origin to partners line, and you can see it's a geographical measures as well. So now this is a line, I'll use make lines, right? So when I double click this origins to partner lines, you can see a lot of lines pops up already. So basically what Tableau now does is it takes the origin of the data, which is basically US, and then linked up with all the trade partner countries, okay, in the world based on the latitude and longitude. So we'll create this line for us, create a map for us. But now looking at this map is quite messy because we're talking about lots of countries here. So to make sure we're only looking at the top 10 countries, we can apply filters based on maybe the import value. So here we just drag countries and put it into the filters. Instead of selecting one by one, I can select the top option by field, and we could do it by the import, okay? For the sum of the import to US, and click OK. And just like that, we have a very clean sheet, which only shows 10 lines representing top 10 import countries to the US. Now, the next thing is how to manipulate this visualizations to highlight which countries is actually having a higher trade value than the other countries, even though they're top 10 already. So now when I mouse over onto any of the line, you can see that once I mouse over onto it, all lines will get selected, because currently I'm looking at all the lines as a whole. Okay, the top 10 countries are being treated as one line. Okay, these are all related. To make sure we can look at individual lines separately, we have to add in the thing that can separate them out, which in this case, the countries. So we can just add countries into the details. Okay. Now, once you have that, when you mouse over onto any of the lines, it will only show that particular countries, that partner countries line, okay, and show it as a tooltip as well. Now that we have all these lines separated, then we can apply some visuals to help us to see which one has a higher or lower import or export value. So now we can apply different measures in. For example, I'm looking at import. We can just drag import into color, for example. Then we can see a darker or a lighter color can show us which countries have a higher or lower import amount to the US. And if we want to have a better representation, we can also drag the import to US maybe into size so that we can show a larger value with a thicker line as well. So just like that, we have created a visualization which takes the geographical data, which is latitude and longitude of the origin, which is US, and all the partner trading countries, latitude and longitude, and make them into lines so that we can see where the trades are actually happening between which country. Okay. So in case in your data, you have two different data points, which is related to point A to point B, and you will link them up together, definitely try to use the make point and make line, and it can show you how these points are actually linked up. Okay. Let's move on to other spatial calculation. The other two calculations are buffers and distance, okay, which are very fun calculation here. So currently in this particular exercise, what I've done is I have loaded in all the MTR stations of Hong Kong as a data set. So what I'm trying to do is figure out, okay, so looking at a particular station from a Taiwan station, within a certain distance, in my case, 2 kilometers, what other stations are there, okay? So currently I have Taiwan in the middle, which is the center point of this visualization. And I'm using buffer to draw a 2 km radius circle around the Taiwan station. And also I'm checking the distance between other station with Taiwan station. And if they're within 2 kilometers, I'm going to show them. If not, I'm going to remove them. So in this particular visualization, we can see where each station is positioned in Hong Kong, and also see what other stations are actually around them. And by adding some parameters of distance and adding some filters based on station, you can actually, for example, jump to different station, maybe East Industrial Station. And here you can see there are a lot of other stations actually around East Industrial Station. And we're talking about 2 kilometers. What if we shorten that distance a bit, maybe to 1 kilometer? Then you can see the circle will get smaller and we get less neighbor stations here as well. So the idea here is to create a buffer with a certain radius and draw on your map, and also use distance to compare whether the distance between the stations are within a range that you like, in our case, within the 1 kilometer distance parameters that we set up in. So how do we create such buffers and distance? Okay? It's rather easy. It's very similar to the make line and make point calculation that we have done. So the first thing that we need is to create buffers. We create those bubbles here. Okay? To create bubbles, what we need is to define what distance we're looking at, and also what is the unit for the distance, in kilometers or in meters or in miles. Okay? So let's open up a new calculation first of all. And let's take a look at the buffer calculation. Okay, the buffer calculation actually takes in 3 inputs. Okay, one is geometry, which is the point that you want to be the center of your buffer. Number, which is the distance, how far you want the radius of the circle to be, and also what is the unit, okay, of the distance in kilometers or in meters or in miles. Okay, so in our case, I want to draw a circle around my stations. Okay, so for the geometry, I need to use make points. Okay, that's what we learned earlier. So here I'm going to say buffer function, but for the geometry, I'm going to make point. Okay, using the source station latitude and longitude. So here you can see we have latitude and longitude, okay, in the source station table. I just drag, okay, oh, my thing is gone. Let me just create a new one, okay. We'll call it calculate buffer. So here I'm going to say buffer, and I'm going to add in geometry. It's called make point, and I'm going to add in latitude and longitude. So this is my first input, which is the geometric point of my station of interest. And then the next parameters is the number. So how far I want it to be. So I can key in a number, 1 or 2, okay? Or I can use a parameter. So previously I have created a parameters called distance, which is in km. So here, instead of having to change the calculation every time, I'm going to use this parameters called distance km for my distance. And the third input is the units of my distance. So because I have previously defined the distance should be in km, so I just add a double quote km as my third input. Okay, so just like that, I'm asking Tableau to create bubbles, okay, based on each station, and the bubble size should have a radius of the distance defined in the distance km parameters, okay, which is shown in km that we have in the parameter value. So if I click OK, what happened is now I have another geo measures. You can see little globe icons there. So by double clicking that buffer, you can see a lot of bubbles showing up. Okay, so each bubble actually represents a station. But again, when I mouse over onto any of the bubbles, you can see all other bubbles will get highlighted, because currently I'm looking all these bubbles as one thing. Okay, the geometric data points. So to make sure we are looking at each station separately, we just need to drag station from the source station and put it into details. And just like that, when you mouse over onto any bubbles, it should only shows you the name of that particular station. Okay, so Tunmun, okay, or okay, Tinsoiwai or whatever. Okay, now these are all bubbles. You may think, so can we change the size of these bubbles by updating the size here? So one thing to note is that the size of the bubble is not affected by the size here anymore, because the size of the bubbles is actually the distance that we have set up in the buffer calculation. So previously we have set up Tableau the buffer calculation to use the distance parameters. So if we would like to make the bubbles bigger or smaller based on the distance, all we need to do is show the distance km parameter control and adjust it there. For example, I want to see 2 as the radius of these circles. I just update it to 2. Then here you can see all the bubbles will get bigger. So basically these bubbles is not just, they don't have random size. All of them have a 2 km radius of size. Okay, so let's go back to 1 so that I can have a clear picture. So now I have a map which shows the stations, okay, and we have a buffer, we have a circle circling them as well. But the next thing I want to do is I want to show what are the neighbor stations out there, okay? And what are the neighboring stations around these stations as well? So the trick here is we're going to add another map, okay? So here to add another map, we're going to select Control or Command if you're using Mac, and just duplicate the latitude and pull it to the right-hand side. So what happened here is I'm having 2 maps now. Now for the upper maps, I want to keep it as buffer. I want these circles to show the 1 km radius circle. But for the bottom map, I want to show all the other stations without the buffer. I just want to lay out all the other stations and see where they are. So now that we have 2 maps, okay, having 2 latitude in the rows, we can go to the mark section and select the second mark section and remove, okay, all the contents there, okay? First of all, okay? So you can see that the map has nothing now because there's no way to define where to draw these bubbles or draw any of the station. But now what I wanted to do is I want to use the target station, which is all the neighboring stations as a parameters to draw my maps. So here I'm going to put in latitude. I'm going to put in longitude, okay? And here you can see one point here, okay? This is basically the average latitude and longitudes of all my stations. Now to break down all these stations, I just need to go to my dimension, target station, station target, and drag that into details, okay? And just like that, now we get the map back. But now we're not using buffer, okay? Currently, we're just using circles to represent all the neighboring stations. Now to make it a bit different from the upper one, so I was doing circles, I'm gonna change this, change the shape, okay? From circles to a train. So here I have added in the custom menu, I have added the train icon. So just select that and applied. Then now we can see these are not buffers, these are not circles, these are actually stations. Now that we have the buffer chart and also the station chart created, the next thing to do is to combine them, okay? So that we have the buffer and the neighboring station in one map. So I believe most of us have done this before, which is by doing a dual axis map here. So go to the second latitude in the row section and turn on the dual axis charts here. So just like that, we can see the buffer and also we can see the stations, okay? Now, the next thing I want to do is to create a calculations to see what's the distance between any given station with all the neighboring stations. So the next thing is I want to check the distance. So to check the distance, we're going to use the fourth spatial calculation available, which is distance. So just create a new calculation, and I'm going to call it distance. Okay. Now for the distance calculation, what we needed are three inputs: the start, the end, and the unit. The start and ends are both geometric points, okay? So which is the source station, geometric point, and the target station, geometric point. And the unit, it's the distance unit, km, meters, or miles, whatever. So we're gonna know how we're gonna display that distance in a particular number. So here I'm gonna call it distance, make a distance calculation. And here we need the start. Start would be make point here again, right? So here I'm gonna pull that from the latitude of the source station and the longitude from the source. And I'm gonna make the second parameters as make point of longitude, target, and latitude and longitude of target, okay? And for the unit, I'm gonna keep it as km because my parameters is in km as well. I'm gonna close the bracket off and just call it distance and just click OK. So now I have the distance of all this between all these stations here. So what I want to do is I want to only keep station which is within a certain distance away from a particular station. Let's look at a particular station first of all. Let's look at a particular station. So here we drag the station from the source station, and I'm going to just show the filters here, okay? And make it a single value list here. So here, when you make a selection in this filters, you can see the buffer will only show one circle, okay? Because that's a selected one. So, but what I wanted to do now is when I select a particular station, I want Tableau to evaluate the Causeway-based station with all the other station. And if the other stations are actually within a certain distance, I want to keep them. If not, I'm going to remove them. So basically, what I need to do is compare this distance that I have calculated earlier with the parameters of distance that we have used. So currently, we have set to 1. So all we need to do is just create another calculation and just say if the distance is less than or equals to the distance km parameters, so I'm going to call it within range. So if it is within the range of the parameters of distance km, I'm going to keep it. If not, I'm going to filter them out. So here I'll just turn on create a new calculation called within range. and click OK. Then I can just drag within range into filters. And all I want is true. I want to make sure I'm looking at the within range stations only. So once you select true and click OK, then here you can see the map will get zoom in to particular Causeway Bay and the neighboring stations. So within 1 km from the Causeway Bay station, there is Tin Ho. But once we drill down into a more detailed level map, we can see the map only shows us the water and the land. But of course, we probably want to look at the streets and also buildings as well. Now, in 2000, and in the new version of Tableau, that our map got enhanced as well. So if you go to the map options and go to background maps, okay, in fact, you can actually change the maps into different formats as well. So here we can go to maps and background maps. And normal basically is just the water and the land. But in case you want to see streets as well, you can always select the streets option. And Tableau will add more layers to the map. And one thing to note is about this buffer is that originally it will create a circle which is a bit transparent. In case that bubble of that color of the buffer is blocking you from looking at the actual map, you can always adjust the transparency of the buffer. So here in this case, the buffer is being created in the first latitude. I can always go to the color, and maybe you can turn on the opacity so that we can have the blue color gone, or we can add a bit of a color, but also adding a borders to it so that we can see the lines properly, okay? Or the other things that we can do is we can change the map layers, okay? So that our map have a lower washout value so that the map it's more clear, okay, or more for us to read, okay? So there are different ways that we can adjust the buffer colors and also the map colors to make the maps more visible, okay? So in this particular exercise, this practice is to get familiar with the buffer and the distance. So we use buffer to draw a circle certain radius away from the center point, okay? That's what buffer does, okay? Which is just basically draw a circle. But the distance is if you have two particular data points that you want to look at the distance between the two, you can use distance and apply some filters to only look at particular data points, which is within certain distance from your center point, okay? So this particular example is we apply buffer to draw the circle and distance to filter out a station which is far away from a particular station. Okay? So that's buffer and distance. So the last feature that I want to highlight is that the animation feature, okay? So let's jump to the animation features now, okay? So for this animation features, I'm looking at the trade status between the US and all the partnering countries from 2002 to 2016. So to ensure that we can see the rank changes from year to year, I'm using the page functions with years in it. So having year in the page section, we can actually turn on a page control, which we can get Tableau to play the data from 2002 to 2016. So here in the page control, when I hit play, you can see that the visualization will gradually move. So you can see that in this particular visualization, the bars, the maps are actually moving in an animated way. It's going smoothly. This is a new thing that we have added into Tableau, okay? Which we can make the transitions of data point smoothly through animation. And to turn on animation is actually very, very simple. Now in the newer version of Tableau, the 2020.1, in the format option, there is something called the animations. If you select that option, you should see a menu on the left-hand side. By default, it should be off. If it is off, and if I play this, for example, you can see that the data just jumps, right? It just changes from one value to another without any smooth transition. If you want to show a more smooth transition between the changes of data, you can turn on this animation option, okay, from off to on. Then when you turn on the page option, you can see that the data will move smoothly, okay, from one value to another. This is a great way if you want to show how things are changing from time to time, or from different products or from different customers, okay? This is a great way to do so. So let's look at how we create such visualization, which will look at the ranking of the import to US and changes the positions of this map accordingly. Let's try this together. So let's jump to the animation practice. So to create this chart, first of all, we need to figure out who are the top 10 import to US country, first of all. So let's take a look at the top 10 countries. So first of all, let's look at the import to country first as the total value. And then I double click countries to get all the countries. But having all the countries show up, it's a bit hard to read. So I'm gonna filter out only the top 10. So here I'm gonna drag countries into filters, select the top options by field, import to US, top 10, sum, okay, and click OK. So here we have a visualization which shows the top 10 import to US partner country, okay? Now I wanna change the format of this visualization a bit. Instead of showing bars, I wanna show the map. So I'm gonna turn this visualization into a lollipop chart, having the lollipop part being the map of the country. So here the trick here is we're going to duplicate the sum of imports to US and make it into another visualization. They have the same value, but now I'm going to adjust the left-hand side to a thin bar, okay? So to adjust the left-hand side chart only, do make sure that in the mark section, you are in the first import to US mark section. I'm going to update this to a bar. I'm going to change the size to be a lot smaller. I'm going to update the color from blue currently to black, okay? And for the second visualization, instead of showing as a bar, I'm going to show it as shape, okay? So here I'm going to change it to shape. And for the shape, it shouldn't be circle, it should be the maps, okay, of the countries. So previously I had updated the countries default shapes already. So now if you drag the countries into map, it should show you the maps, but now it's a bit too small. To make them bigger, and just change the size of it by moving the slider slightly to the right, okay? Then you can see that the maps get bigger and bigger. And you can see animation is in work already. So you can see that the map grows bigger gradually. So now that I have the bars, okay, and now that I have the maps, I can use the trick of dual axis to combine them into one visualization. Now, every time when we are doing these kind of lollipop chart, do make sure that the two axes are synchronized, okay? Because if not, you may see the bar going over or going too short, okay, and not connecting with the shape that we're looking at, the maps. So do make sure anytime you're doing lollipop chart, you synchronize the two axes. So now that we have a lollipop chart showing the top 10 import to US partner country, the next thing is to set up the page so that we can go from 2002 to 2016. So the most obvious thing to do would be to drag year into page, right? So by default, Tableau always picks up the lowest value in the page item. So in this case is 2002 as the year. But immediately you can see that there's some problem because currently this visualization, it's ranking all the country based on the total amount of import to US across all the years, okay? So China, it's always number one because based on the total value, it is number one. So no matter which year of page we're looking at, it is still being placed at the very high position. So in order to create that ranking change animation, what I need to do is ask Tableau to do the ranking based on the current viz data, okay? So to do that, we have to use something called the table calculation. For some of us who have been using Tableau long enough, we may know that table calculations happens at a later stage of the order of operation. So basically, table calculation will do the ranking after the page is done and after all the other filters have been done, okay? So in fact, I want that to happen. I want the ranking to be done at the very end, and I'm going to use that resulting ranking to prioritize which country to show up on the list. So the idea here is to create a rank table calculation based on the import to US. So to do so, I'm going to drag import to US into details. And here I'm going to turn on the quick table calculation of rank, okay? And do make sure we are ranking this based on the countries, okay? Because we are ranking all these countries, and every time we jump to the second year or the other year, we're going to redo the ranking. So we are just going along the countries only. So now that we have the table calculation set up, you should see a little triangle there. And because we want to set up as the rank but so I'm going to make this as a discrete or dimension value, or the discrete value. I'm going to drag that onto the rows, okay? And like that, we can see how the visualization changes. So here currently, it's telling us that China and Canada were #1 some point of the timeline, okay? Between 2002 and 2016, along with in some of those years, China is #1 and some of the years Canada is #1. Okay, for #2, we have these 3 countries. But this is not what I want. I want to have 1 and 2 and 3 for each individual year show up separately. So the idea is to drag country. We cannot leave country alone because we're using that as a table calculation compute by. We just drag countries into the details here, okay? And just like that, you can see that the ranking now is in the right order. And currently we are looking at 2002 specifically. And if we play this animation, you can see that the ranking stays from 1 to 10, but the country will change accordingly because the ranking it's now done after the page and after all the filters that have been done. So in this way, we can create an animated lollipop chart, which shows which countries is having the highest import to US amount in each individual years. And you can see the countries ranking changes compared to the other countries. Okay? So in case you're doing some ranking or top N analysis, this is a great way to use lollipop chart and animation and to show the how the ranking change along a time series. Okay, so this is another neat feature that we have, which is animation, and highly recommend you to try it out in case you have some ranking or any other visualization. And for animation, it applies to all filters as well. Okay, as long as data will change in your visualization, if you turn on the animation, it will see the animation change gradually as well. And a small point about the animation is the options. So if you go to the animation options, you can see that you can turn it on and off. Of course, you can change the duration of the animation. You want it to go fast or go slow. I like to go at 1 second so we can see the transition. So that's how I like it. But of course, if you find it too slow, you can always make it into higher figures. And we have something called the sequential and the simultaneous. So basically for sequential, so all data will be set back to 0, and then it will update to the newer value. But whereas when you simultaneously, when a value goes from negative to positive, it would just go in one shot, okay, instead of going back to 0. So in case you want to see the change from time to time in a more sequential way, we want everything to reset before it shows the next value, then we can use sequential. But if you want to see the result more quickly and more immediately, then probably you can use the simultaneous options. Okay? And you can always apply animation on particular sheets as well, in case you don't want the whole dashboard to have animation, or you just want a particular sheet to have animation. You can do that in the second part of the animation panel as well, okay, by applying animation on particular sheet, on selected sheets. Okay. So yes, this is another neat features of Tableau that we have added in 2020.1. Okay? So these are the new features that I'm going to cover today. So hope that these new features will give you some ideas on how to do other analysis. Okay, feel free to play around with this workbook and the new features as well. So now I'm going to pass the stage back to Paulo to close this off.
Yes, thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Bobby. This is really a great sections, and I didn't realize that this kind of function is so easy to use. Honestly, when I first see the dashboard, I feel like it takes a lot of effort, and I was thinking it would take the group here quite a bit of time to master all these skills. But from your sharing and your walkthrough, we just realized it is really quite convenient to do all these kind of tricks. So thank you very much. I think at least I would have another 3 months in office, which I can easily amaze my boss with in a very convenient way. So thank you. So for our attendees, right now we are actually open for any questions. So in case you have any questions you would like to ask, please feel free to use the Q&A boxes. We will see it and then we'll take it to answer it here. While we are waiting, I would also like to do a bit of advertisement here. So for those of you who have registered through the portal, you'll see we have some question asking whether you're interested in doing sharing to the group in future, or whether you would like to help this community in future. And we're glad to see that many of you have responded to us that you're willing to contribute to the community. So going forward in the next few days, you may receive our emails to you regarding to explore in what ways we can ask you to help the community by either doing sharing in the next event, or to discuss on in what way we can together work to make this community stronger. So I don't see anyone posting questions here. So in the interest of time, let's just close these sections. I do hope that in the next sections, we'll be able to do it offline so we can meet and mingle a bit after the event. Oh, wait, we have one question here. Okay, so we have questions, and Bobby, perhaps you can take these questions. The question is about how does the animations affect the performance of a dashboard?
So, okay, so basically it won't really affect the performance of the dashboard, because basically the data is there already. We just lengthen the time to show the data in a more smooth way. So it doesn't really affect the performance of the dashboard at all. In fact, it will make it better because the change will move, will goes gradually. So it's actually the easiest for us to read and easiest for Tableau to process. So it doesn't have much effect on the performance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we have two more questions. The first question is, I'm trying to set a date filter for my dashboard and wondering how I could set custom date range on the filter.
Custom date range on the filters, okay. So if custom date range, okay. So so basically when you are creating a filter, so basically originally when you set up a filter using a date dimension, it will take the minimum date and the maximum date, which is the, and that's a 2n, so you can, so the range. So in case you would like to define your own range, so what you can do is to duplicate, first of all, duplicate your existing date objects into a second date dimension, and then add the second date dimensions into the filters and define the range that you want first, okay? But the next thing you need to do is add that into context, okay? If you add that into context, basically it will restrict the data sets into just that range that you're looking at, okay? And then you pull your original date dimensions into the filters and show the filters. And in the filter options, make sure you select add values from context only, okay? So in that case, then the second filters that you add in will not look at the full sets of data. It will only look at what's in the context already, okay? So that's one way to limit the range of your filters, which is to have have another filter that in place already and put it into context. And then we use the context's data to show the second filter, okay? So that's one way, okay? I can see another one, as I can see that the animation part, there is particular icon for each country. Could we assign another? Of course you can, okay? So the country that I'm using shape for each of the country. So basically I just drag countries onto the shape marks so that each country have their own maps to show their country. In case you want to change it, you can just hit the shape icon and you can select whatever shape you have in your machine or the default shapes that we have in Tableau and assign to them. Yeah. That was preset. Okay. Yes. So yes. So for is there? I mean, the country icon. Yes, it was preset for this workshop because I don't want to spend the time to go through 10 countries map assignment. So I have done it previously. So for these shapes assignment, you can do it at the default of the dimension. There's a default property options for each dimension, which you can set that. Or once you have set up the shape assignment in your workbook, okay, that shape assignment it's defined in the workbook. Every time you reuse that dimensions in another sheet, that shape will get assigned as well. Okay, so you can do it either at the dimension level default, or you can just set up one of the sheet, then or the other sheet will grab that shape. Okay, for that from that assignment as well. Yeah, it was preset for this exercise. Yes. Standard, by default, it should be 0.3 seconds. So there's a question about, is there a standard for animation speed? So if you just turn on the animation, as far as I know, the default speed should be 0.3. But I personally like 1 second. So at least I can see that see data changes like gradually. So my personal preference is 1 second, but you can always change that. I like it slow, so I make it 1 second.
There's another question. Is it possible to add my own design icon? I think that's a yes. You can change it in the icon, right?
Yes, okay. To add your own icon, so for all Tableau installation of desktop, there is always a My Tableau repository folder in your documents folder. No matter using Mac or Windows, there's always a documents folder. Inside there's a My Tableau repository, and inside there is a shape folders. If you place like PNG or JPEG into that folder, those will show up in your shape options. Yeah. Okay, let me just show the screen then. Okay, let me show that very quickly. So if you guys can see my screen, okay. So for all Tableau desktop installed PC, Mac or Windows, there's a document folders. So inside document folders, there's something called the My Tableau repository. You double click that. There's a shape folders. Okay. So here you can see these folders here. Okay, each folders contains some icons. So for my case, I have added a folders called flag. Okay, this is a custom folder that I created. Double click that. You can see all these PNG files with the country's flag. Okay, so basically, once I have these flags available, okay, in my shape folder, then when I go to my shape menu, there should be a flag folder first of all, which shows the map that I have added in to that folder. And then I just assign which country should have which flag. Okay? So you just have to make sure you have the my documents, my Tableau repository, and shapes. And it got a folder containing the image that you want. It's better to be in PNG, it's smaller in size usually.
Oh, I just want to add here is my personal experience. So in my use case, in my work, I use the custom icons a lot because probably some of you may know I work for the Hong Kong Jockey Club. So we do have a set of custom icons like the horse, like the jockeys. And while it's good it's good and it's helpful to amaze the boss. One sharing is you may want to share the custom icons with your teammates as well. So all of your teammates will always be sharing using the same set of custom icons. So on one hand, it saves quite a bit of time, and on the other hand, you can control have a certain control on the consistency, and it will be quite handy.
Yes, okay. I highly recommend using shapes as well. Yes, because it makes the visualization more attractive. Okay. More easy to understand. If you show a flag, everybody knows which country that is, right? Instead of reading the words. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Well, there's another question that I see. Okay, how can we find latitude and longitude? Tableau does not have a function that will to define the latitude and longitude. It must come in as a data source, as a data that's readily available. Okay. But some ideas of how you can get latitude of a country, a cities, or an address is to use Google. Okay. So Google offers Google Maps. Okay, so on a map you can actually right-click on any position that you want. Okay, and just right-click it. There's something called "What is this?" And when you select that option, it will show you the latitude and longitude. Okay, that's a more manual way. But in case you know R or Python, you can actually use R and Python just to use the Google APIs to grab the latitude and longitude from a particular address as well. Okay, so yeah, there are different ways that you can grab the latitude and latitude. Okay, but it has to be done. It has to be done outside of Tableau. And for Tableau, we only takes in the numbers, okay, of the latitude and longitude. Is there any other questions?
I think that's it. So far, I think we covered everything.
Cover everything. Okay, good. Yeah. So thank you everybody for joining today. Okay, taking.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
Personal time. Thank you. Thank you, Paulo, as well. Okay, for organizing this. This is great. Yeah. Even though we cannot see each other, but at least we know each other's existence.
Well, let's hope for the next section then.
Yeah, we can see each other in person. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. If you have any questions afterwards, you can always contact us, contact me or contact Bobby. We will try to answer the questions afterwards. So thank you very much and wish everyone have a great evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.